Hello, Michael Stoll, or Tittle13 King, and as you may see, we have a new series of KSP. This is to every planet and back, and the objective of this is to, in 16 episodes, make it everywhere in the Kerbal system. This is the analog of the solar system in Kerbal Space Program, so it'll have planets, moons, you know, the star, everything like that. This is just me selecting the ship. And today we are going to our first destination, the Mun. The Mun, for those of you that don't play KSP, is the closest body to Kerbin, which is the analog for Earth. This is Kerbin here on the screen, and we are about to lift off and begin our journey to the Mun. It looks quite a lot like the Moon in real life, and Kerbin is fairly similar to Earth. However, it has two moons instead of just the Mun. It also has one named Minmus. But today we're just going to go to the Moon and play around there. Just me cycling the lights, and we're making our climb into orbit. We're at 8 kilometers, 9, taking a picture. Now, you're supposed to turn at 10 kilometers, but I actually turn about 2 kilometers late, as you can see here, because I was just waiting for my fuel cans to run out there, so that I didn't have to turn and eject, just in case I hit them. So, that blue line there is our trajectory, or the path that our spacecraft will follow, and right now we are set to hit the ground again, and that's not good, so I will just burn into orbit using the lower stage here, which is actually quite large for a spacecraft, but it's also quite efficient, so I decided to use it. It's actually so efficient, in fact, that we end up using it to deorbit and slow down on our way to the ground on the Mun, which I've just spazzed around there. Right, so stop burning because we have a high enough apoapse, or the highest point in a trajectory, that it's in the vacuum of space, which means I'm not going to drop if I'm not burning. So I can just coast there, and there you see me burning the rest of the way into orbit. Reject the last of the external fuel tanks on the lower stage, because they've run out of fuel and they are no use to us anymore. And we're about halfway into orbit, going well. You can see the massive crater on Kerbin. If I can, there we are. We have orbit. So I'm going to circularize it, or get it above 70 kilometers, so that it doesn't slowly deteriorate, as 70 kilometers is the edge of the atmosphere. So any orbit with a periapse of over 70 kilometers will be stable, basically. Periapse is the opposite of an apoapse, meaning it's the lowest point in a trajectory. And you will hear me say periapse and apoapse many times throughout any KSP video, because they are very useful. I just set a maneuver node, which is that dotted line, and that basically just tells me where and when to burn if I want to go to a certain place, and how long I need to burn and everything, so it's quite useful in the long run. There we are, actually carrying out this node, and I actually burn a little bit early because the way the game renders nodes is it averages it. It averages the time it takes to burn both before and after. So for you to burn on the node and have the accuracy of a full accuracy of a node, you would need to burn in absolutely no time. So you have to actually burn half before and half after for it to for the most accuracy, and so that's why I will never burn exactly when it tells me to. Here we are, we've actually entered the sphere of influence of the Moon. It's a bit barren compared to Kerbin. It's a lot smaller as well, with about 1/6 of the gravity, not unlike the real Moon around Earth. That is how you actually spell Moon. It is not M-O-O-N, it is M-U-N. There we are. If you can see those little jets on the side of the rocket, those are reaction control thrusters, or RCS, and they allow me to turn in space, where fins won't help you in space, and using the torque of your spacecraft isn't effective enough, so you will often add RCS thrusters. Here we are, getting closer and closer, 550,000 meters, 550 kilometers, that's about 300 miles, for those of you in America, or anyone who doesn't understand the metric system. So, opening up our solar panels so that we don't run out of power, because that would cause us to lose control, as I actually did coming around. You can see me, we are finally in orbit now, and see those two tabs of the periapse and apoapse. And if you see there, where my cursor was just pointing, is in the massive crater, there is a strange canyon section that actually looked like a question mark. And so that's actually quite interesting, and we should check that out in another episode. Sadly, we don't in this episode, but we will another time. We have three people, three Kerbonauts in the bottom right of the screen, you can see them. And in the middle is Bob Kerman, and on the left and right are two people I can't read or remember the names of. So, they shall be forever— oh! Right, we have just deorbited, and so our trajectory is heading towards the ground, which means we are set to land, more or less. We still have to do much adjusting, but we won't stay in orbit, and we will hit the ground one way or another from this point on. See my reaction control thrusters having a heyday, trying to stop the craft from spinning, and we time warp down. You see the mountains rendering, the deep craters. It's really not the best place for a landing, but we make do. On the top right, for anyone who's interested, is how much fuel I have left in this stage, so you can actually monitor that I only have about 1/8 of the fuel left. Oh right, yeah, as you can see, we are back in real time, and this is how fast I'm actually coming in, and how quickly I was actually falling. And so I'm actually beginning to panic at this point. And just checking my microphone's on, sorry. I'm actually beginning to panic at this point, thinking I'm going to hit the ground far too quickly. So we're nearly out of fuel in that lower stage, and you will actually see me eject it quite quickly, which will lead to some interesting synchronized rolling. I will explain to that in a minute, but you really need to see it. It's quite interesting, actually. So coming down, right. Got ourselves under control now, finally. Doing a bit of a roll just so I can set the orientation right. And the Kerbonauts seem fairly happy, but you would be. There we are, finally out of fuel in the lower stage, and we begin burning with the actual lander. You can see how efficient that bottom stage is, even though it's quite large. And larger lifting bodies usually tend to be less efficient, but that is a especially good— oh. And the bottom stage hits. This is why we slow down, for anyone who's wondering. We don't want to leave another crater on the moon, right? And there's that synchronized rolling I was talking about. As you can see, the monopropellant tanks rolling gently across the surface. So here we are, finally landed on the surface. And you can see the suspension of the landing legs as it cushions the harsh forces acting upon the lander of impact. And here we are with monopropellant tanks in a bit of a synchronized swimming lesson. Oh, yes. Lovely shadow there. And we open up the ladders on the lander, and the crew inside are conferring as to who can be the first person to step on the surface of the moon. Of course it's going to be Bob, because he's the one in the orange suit, and he's special. So, finally come to a decision. And he goes down the ladder, turns on his headlamp, climbing down. But he decides, you know what? Screw the ladder, I'm gonna jump off. It doesn't really work out. So, he jetpacks down. And he's going to plant a flag. Very fascinated at those rocks. Must have been something in them. So here we are, planting the glorious flag that is the Communist Republic. Right. So we name it Genesis in ode to Apollo 8's mission, which is my personal favourite. And we give it a nice little description there, telling about the bravery and what have you about the Kerbonauts. You can see the lander didn't look that big from... It looked quite small compared to the bottom stage, but actually seeing it compared to a Kerbonaut, it looks massive, which gives you a bit of a skewed sense of perspective there. And it's always fascinating to me looking at how small the people are compared to the small, seemingly small lander. Believe me, this is by no means the largest craft that we will be piloting. So it gives you a real sense for size. Lovely 1/6 gravity there, as Bob does a nice demonstration of that by jumping on the surface. Getting a nice picture there. Everything's so nice. And we decide to take the other two unnamed Kerbonauts, who can't grab onto ladders, but can use jetpacks. And cutting it close to the solar panels there, never a good idea. As they break at taps, and they're quite important for getting us home. So we try to adjust our sense of depth perception there, and try to actually land on top of the Kerbal's head, because no picture is complete without a tower of people, Kerbonauts. Third man out. All of their suits work, which is great, because we basically just duct tape together bits of cloth. Yeah, again cutting it close to that solar panel. So, yep. Got to be careful about that. Yeah, trying to maneuver in here, but we miss horribly. Coming in. There we are on the head. But he ends up just kicking the other person off and impaling himself on the flag. So we give up on that idea and we go to a more conventional method, sadly, because I quite like towers of Kerbals. He won't give up. Good man. There we are. It's not quite the same. And so... he's afraid of the ground, something. I can't quite... Right, so... we get him all situated, and we take a lovely picture on the moon and make a massive postcard. Cycling through the views. Come on, take that picture. As you can see, I'm very bad at finding people, as it would turn out. Come on. Right. All very, very happy to have survived this treacherous journey that I have taken them on. Just trying to get everything in. Getting a good thumbnail for the picture here, you see. Not quite sure what I'm doing here now. There we are, just having a look around. Scoping out the scene. And now is the part of the show where we demonstrate both acrobatics. Yes, very good. That was actually extremely good for a jump. Quite proud of him. but we will show you the ancient and glorious sport of mudsliding. Once these two people get in there. Come on. So we get him in the hatch. Go on, thing two. Of course, Bob Kerman will be the one to demonstrate. Go on. Get up the ladder. Right, not quite sure what's going on here. Right. Okay, so let's just talk about the moon. The moon is the closest moon to Kerbin. It's about 1/6 of the size. It looks quite similar to the moon in real life. So it's generally just a replica of the real moon. As we get in here. But it's actually... well, the whole game is scaled down so that it is easier to get into orbit and everything. And so it's about 60 times denser than the real moon. So that it can have the same amount of gravity. Right. Here we are, getting in. And he's going to do a warm-up. Just a nice warm-up of moonsliding. As we speed it up to 2 times. Because it actually took quite a while. See, quite a spectacular display. But Bob insists he can do better. So Mission Control say, okay then, if you can do better, give it a go. So he gets a bit more of a running start there. You can see his shadow recedes away onto the horizon. He has one last look back, and impact. Much better, and we get some lovely flips. Great technique. The judges gave him a 9 out of 10, 9 out of 10, and 11 out of 10. But the third judge was a dog. So, coming in, it's also sort of interpretive dance. You usually play it to jazz music or the final countdown, but that's another story. I have been talking for 17 minutes now, and slowly, remember this is in 2 times speed, so it's a very slow deacceleration, and you could see the galaxy that I just focused on on the horizon, in the sky, whatever you want to call it. We don't know what galaxy that actually is. It could be the Milky Way, so we could even be neighbours, but it could be a different galaxy altogether. So we have no idea where the Kerbal system actually is. You can get a great view of the star Kerbal, which is named. It's like Sol, but with Kerb for the Kerbal in front of it. But it's not spelled the same as Kerbal. It's spelled Kerbal with an O. Just making our way back, but he comes in a bit hot, so he actually gives it another moonslide. There we are. Hits the ground, just at 4 times speed as he just barrel rolls, barely missing that monopropellant tank. Falls over again. I think he's a bit disoriented after that. Well, then again, he did hit 3 mountains, right? So we get back in. Suddenly very lucid, and he boards. So we retract the ladders, stay on the moon's surface for another day, and decide it's time to go home. So activating the engines, saying one last goodbye to the moon, retract the gears, and head into orbit once again. It's a fairly easy task, as the moon has only 1/6 of the gravity and no atmosphere. It takes hardly any time at all to get into orbit. We once again coast to the apoapsis, as that is the most efficient option, and we continue our way into orbit around the moon. They're becoming very homesick and can't wait to make it all the way home to their planet of Kerbin. I'm having a look in, slightly nervous, but it's alright because Bob Kerman is in command. There we have orbit. But we don't need to stay into an orbit, we have no need for an orbit, so we continue until we are back in Kerbin Sphere of Influence. So there we are, and that orange circuloid is our trajectory around Kerbin. However, the moon actually picks us up quite quickly. It must have missed us. And there's me, burning the wrong way again. So you see me have to actually correct myself. Because the way I was burning would actually bring me out further from Kerbin. And so I have to burn the other way. And there you see it. Burning, burning, burning to bring our periaps around Kerbin much lower. There we are. And we will warp back. Hopefully the moon doesn't pick us up again. And as it turns out, it doesn't. But we're not done yet. We need to actually bring our craft back into the atmosphere so that we can slow down and land, bringing an end to the journey. Now, we need one last burn to get us into the atmosphere. Around 30 kilometers will do it. That is the recommended height for a good capture. And there, a lovely view of all three celestial bodies, and, in fact, a solar eclipse. I have never seen this before this recording session, and so this is very rare footage. It's the only footage I have of it, and it's the only time I've ever seen it, so it's very good. You see the large crater on Kerbin there, on the left, possibly caused by a massive asteroid, which may have made the moon. So you see us coming down in the atmosphere. We're under 70 kilometers, and you should begin to see our trajectory lower, and we have no need for the lander anymore, and so we eject and prepare for re-entry. Now re-entry is very good, as you can see it now. We're actually going so fast through the atmosphere that the air hitting the vessel spontaneously combusts, which is always good, and it actually proves for a very, very beautiful light show. As you can see, the front of the craft is illuminated by fire, as the whole ship is enveloped in flame. Coming down, as the view from the windows, spectacular plasma display, pun intended, and we do a roll for realism, for kicks, passing over a bit of land here that we end up landing on, which is good. You can see Bob on the inside just patting out the rest of these flames as we slow down enough so that there we are, finally no longer on fire, and we begin the vertical drop. But to do that, we need a parachute. See, the good thing about atmospheres is you don't actually need an engine to land, unless your parachute or drag is insufficient, but it's a lot more efficient to land on a parachute than it is on an engine. And so we do so. So the more efficient you are, the less crap you have to carry into space, and so it just proves for a lot more of a comfortable journey. Parachute deployed, and here is the real-time. This is real-time footage. You could see the shadow, and there it is now, and coming in the final seconds. 1 down, 15 to go. Thank you, goodbye.